Hello, everyone. Happy Wednesday. We are excited to be here at the Moira Press with our special guest, Debbie DeStefano, who is an astrology teacher and has been for a long time. She teaches a lot of intro classes and intro students, also can do the higher level stuff. I know Debbie, and Debbie is a high level astrologer, but I think one of her passions is teaching people kind of the more rudimentary concepts of astrology. And so today we're here to learn about dispositorship from Debbie. Hello, Debbie.
Hi, everybody. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much, Andy, for giving me this opportunity. And Jay Z, thank you for joining in. This is going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to this. Um, I, I started astrology a long time ago, and it was kind of my calling. And I say a calling because it kept calling me back. And the person who taught me about dispositors, her name was Jerry London. She was a teacher at the Astrological Society in Princeton, where I cut my teeth on astrology over there, pretty much so. And so she told us about dispositors, but she didn't call them dispositors. She called them following the rulers. So I'm going to give you an example of how that works. I'm trying to share
Wait,
here.
before
Can
you
you?
before you get into anything too in depth, there's a lot of listeners on this YouTube channel who are new and everything. What is a dispositor? I mean, Jay-Z.
I'm
Go ahead.
Yes, I'm going to get into that.
Okay,
Yeah,
Do you see my slides, or I'm trying
not
to?
yet.
Not yet. Okay, let me see here. I'm
yeah, because
thinking.
Andy, you were saying that Debbie teaches like rudimentary and basic things about astrology, and I never heard of dispositors. So this is really
Okay.
interesting and exciting, and I'm not sure it's a basic topic, is it? But or maybe you'll just explain it so succinctly, it'll be like, ah, of course,
It's
that's.
probably advanced basics.
Hmm.
Yeah. Well, we're going to talk about dispositors and what they are and how we use them. So let me get started here with this. Okay. So what are dispositors? Okay, they're also known as following the rulers. So let's say if a planet is in a sign, okay, that it does not rule. For instance, if Sun is in Taurus and the Moon is in Sagittarius, etc., it will have a dispositor. So Taurus is ruled by Venus, okay, and so Venus would be the dispositor for the Sun in Taurus. And then, of course, Jupiter rules Sagittarius, so Jupiter would be the dispositor for the Moon in Sagittarius. So you can continue following the rulers in different ways. And I'm going to explain also how this is helpful in delineating a chart. And we'll be
All
looking
right,
at,
so for the basics, so a dispositor is another planet.
yes, exactly. It's the planet that rules the sign that the other planet is in.
And this,
Okay.
and this is
Okay.
actually important. And sorry, Debbie, it's a conversation here, but like, okay,
No,
this
I
is
love
the
it.
thing. Okay, imagine this, Jay-Z. Imagine you have a person who's a sun in Aries and a moon in Aries. So we have a super Aries person, right?
Hmm.
Well, we want to know where is their Mars because we want to know where do they send all that heat, where do they send all the energy. And if we saw that their Mars was in Taurus, we'd be like, oh, it's in Aries, but they get heated up right in the Taurus region. So when they get all mad, they're like grit their teeth, right? Whereas if they had Mars in Gemini, they'd be an Aries person, but when they get mad, they'd send it out their throat chakra and start yelling at you. So it actually has a lot of implications into how a person's built.
Yes.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
All right. And then I have another basic beginner question for you then.
Sure.
For the beginners, like, how would they know that Mars rules Aries? They go on the web and they like look up and there's a chart of which planet rules which sign, yeah?
Yes, you could do that, or you could take my beginners class. Yay!
Ah,
Because that's what I teach. I teach the beginners how that all works and what planets rule what signs.
okay.
So
Cool.
yeah, you would need to know. You can look it up. You can Google it. What rules Taurus? What planet rules Taurus? And then you'd know that Venus is the dispositor for the sun if the sun is in Taurus.
Mhm.
Okay.
Cool.
And the
Yeah,
way
yeah,
the
yeah.
ancients would describe it, Jay-Z, is like Venus is at home in Taurus. Venus is at home in Libra. Mars is at home in Aries. So it's like, and we actually look at it as like, Mars is a red sign and Aries is a red, or I'm sorry, Mars is a red planet and Aries is a red sign. So Mars is at home there because it's a red planet and a red sign. Like there's all this color theory to it. So this is why I say this is advanced beginners, because you do kind of have had to take some intro classes to learn rulerships and things like that, which it's worth doing. Like for anyone who's a little overwhelmed now, that should be a rabbit hole you want to go down.
Yeah,
Yeah. Right.
rulerships are huge in learning how to delineate a chart. They're like, to me, they're everything. They're like the biggest major basic thing that you learn when you first learn is how to understand how the rulers are so important. It's like, yeah, just like Andy said, they're very much at home. They just get that sign. It really resonates with that sign. There's much more to it, but that you will understand as you go along how you understand the archetype of those rulers, because they really just blend so well with the sign that they rule. Does that make
All right.
sense for you? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And then I have one more question, right?
Sure.
There are 9 planets, yeah? And 12 signs. So what happens? Where do the other 3 come from?
Well, that's the thing. A lot of these, the outer planets were not discovered till after everything was all settled. So there are double rulerships
Okay, so
sometimes.
there's 6 of them and they each rule 2.
So there's 3 signs that are ruled by 2 different planets.
No, the sun is at home in Leo. The moon's at
Yes,
home in Cancer, which are the two hearts. So the sun and
yes,
moon are the two hearts of the fire heart and the water heart. Then you move out to rulership. There's a rulership circle. So then it goes out to Mercury, which is at home in Gemini and Virgo. And then it goes out to Venus, which is here, and then it goes out to Mars. So
yes.
it goes out to Saturn, and Saturn rules the bones of the legs and the veins in the legs, which is it's hard to explain, but there's a circle of rulerships.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. All
If
right,
you
cool.
if you
And
if
people should
yeah, if you
take the class in rulerships, and then we're gonna just say that that's an assumption for this class.
yeah, JC, are you familiar with the natural wheel? Like a zodiac wheel. So it starts with Aries
Yes.
in the first house. Okay,
Hmm.
yeah. So if you look at that, you can find those online all the time. You'll see like what Andy said. Like so, it's the fifth and the fourth house is the moon, and the fifth house is the sun. Those are their natural rulership houses, and it does fan out. So then it goes by way of our actually planetary lineup in the sky. So then there's Mercury on either side of the moon and the sun, and
Yeah.
then there's Venus on either
Venus.
side of the Mercury signs, and then there's Mars, and then there's Jupiter, and then there's Saturn, and so that's what we start with. But
Oh.
then when the outer planets come in, they had to have double rulership. So there you go. Does that make sense for you?
That makes complete and total sense, and nobody has ever explained it to me before, and it just makes complete sense that way. So thank you, and
Wonderful.
now I'll always remember that. Oh, that's so awesome. All right, cool.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's great. So now there's a thing, it's called, this is the simplest part of dispositors, when you have a mutual reception. And this is where 2 planets are in each other's ruling sign. So here you have the sun is in Taurus and the moon is in Leo. So, that's not right. It should be Venus is in Leo. I have to change that. Venus in Leo. So the
Hmm.
sun is in Taurus, okay, and Venus rules Taurus. And then if Venus was in Leo, the sun rules Leo. They would be together. It's actually almost like a conjunction. It's like they get each other. They understand each other. They're lending their energy to each other. And that's how
It's
that is.
it's like they did a home trade, like when you go on vacation in somebody else's home and they
Yeah.
go on vacation in your home.
Yeah, that's exactly what it's like. Yeah, exactly. They get each other. They're like sharing their energy. It's like, yeah, I get it. So here's the beauty of it all when you have a mutual reception. It doesn't make a difference if they're not even in aspect with one another. Do you understand what aspects are? Yeah. So it doesn't make a difference if there is no aspect, you know, a viable aspect between them. If they're in mutual reception, it's like they're in an aspect really close to each other. Yeah.
Nice.
Okay, we're ready with the next slide. Okay. Okay, there are 3 other kinds of ways to look at dispositors, and we're going to be looking at charts on how this works. I'll take this slow. If you have any questions, please let me know. So we're going to look at a chain, a loop, and a final dispositor. And I'm going to tell you why these are so important. They actually can create a whole pattern in the chart, or they actually are designed as a pattern in each person's natal chart. So we have a chain. It's when we have a string of planets dispositing their energy from one planet to another until the last planet ends the chain by being in its own rulership. Now, let me explain this. For example, Sun in Taurus, the dispositor is Venus. Venus, in this particular chart, is in Sagittarius. So the dispositor for Sagittarius, the ruler of Sagittarius is, Jupiter. Jupiter in the chart is in Aries. So the dispositor would be Mars. Mars rules Aries. And then Mars in this chart is in Scorpio, and it rules Scorpio. That's the end of the chain. So these 4 planets are connected to each other, whether they are not, they're in aspect with each other. So you have the Sun, you have Venus, you have Jupiter, and you have Mars. Now we have to look at the whole chart, but in general, you could think of this as like, maybe this person enjoys dark art, or maybe they are like, they're really sexy and they really, their relationships, they need a lot of physical, connections with each other. They like the beautiful, Sun in Taurus loves things that are like beautiful and sensual and everything. So all of these things kind of fit together. They kind of combine with each other so that they in themselves are like their own little community in the chart. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's
Oh
so cool that
yeah.
it's called a chain. I never knew what that was, but I watched expositors bounce around, and then all of a sudden they arrive at a planet in its own sign, and it can't bounce anymore because it's
Right.
like the Mars in Scorpio. The ruler is Mars in Scorpio. The ruler Mars in Scorpio, and it like goes back to itself. And like, so I never knew that there was a name for that. That's so cool.
That's it. So that's the chain. Now, here, this gets really interesting, and I think this is more intense than a chain. It's a loop. And the loop is when we start with a chain, however, the last planet loops back to one of the other previous planets in that chain. So it's continuous. So Sun in Taurus, dispositor is Venus. Venus in Sagittarius, dispositor is Jupiter. Jupiter in Aries, dispositor is Mars, and Mars is in Leo. Then it goes back to the Sun, which creates an endless loop. Now, this is pretty interesting because if it's like a lot of these are fixed signs or whatever, this is going to be tough. It could be a challenge. If it's cardinal, it's something that they keep, trying to keep going at it, or if it's mutable or whatever. So there are different things that you could look at. And do you understand those modalities, Jay-Z?
I
Okay, yeah,
do. I
yeah.
do.
So
And so
yeah,
mutual reception would be a loop of 2.
that's right. That's
Whoa.
exactly right. Yeah, good observation. That's excellent. Yeah. But a long loop, this is a long loop. So you have several planets and they're all connected and they just keep going in a pattern. So this is much more intense than a chain because it just never, it can't escape. It's kind of like in this loop.
Mhm.
Then the last one we're going to look at is a final dispositor. These aren't so common, and they require only one planet and can be in rulership, and there could be no mutual receptions or loops. So if a person's natal chart has only one planet in rulership, there's a good chance that it will have a final dispositor. And it almost has the feel of a chart ruler. I have a very interesting chart. I'm going to show
Wait, what
you.
is the final dispositor though? What is it though?
The final dispositor is kind of the last say. It's almost like a chart ruler, because all the planets, they just funnel back into the one planet.
So how's that different than the chain? Is the chain the last? Is the final dispositor the last planet in the chain?
Yes, yes.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, in a chain, there are other planets involved, and you could actually have multiple chains in a chart. You could have, there could be, I always like to start with the ascendant, with the chart ruler, and work from there. But you could do it any other way you want. And I'll show you in the charts that I'm going to give you as an example how that works.
Fascinating.
So you're saying that a final dispositor is when they're linked, but then they don't close the.
It's only one planet. Everything, it gets funneled into the one planet.
So
I'll show. Yeah.
sorry, it's
Oh,
the
yeah, sure.
last, GZ, it's the last planet in the chain is the final dispositor because it can't, right? Like
If it
It w-
doesn't
a chain
They
and then
resolve.
the last
all
one.
the planets just funnel into one. You'll see it in the example. I'll show you how it works, and you'll
All
see
right,
how
cool.
different. You'll see how different it is from a chain or a loop, because there are multiple. You could have multiple chains in a chart. You could have multiple loops in a chart. But if you have a final dispositor, there's only one planet that disposits every other planet to every other planet in the chart. Okay. So I get very excited when I see a final dispositor because it's not too often you see one of those. Okay. This is going to be the, okay, we have here.
Oh, I love Neil Diamond. My mom was a big fan. Always
Me
playing
too.
Neil Diamond in my house.
Me too. I love him too. And there's a lot, and there's some interesting things about this. So this is going to be the mutual reception one. Okay, so I like to start with the chart ruler. You could do it many different ways, but I like to start with the chart ruler. The chart ruler is the planet that rules the ascendant. Okay, and so we have Libra here, and so the chart ruler would be Venus, right? So we're going to look at Venus, and it's down here, right on the 4th house cusp, pretty much. Okay, and it's in Capricorn. Venus is in Capricorn. So what rules Capricorn?
Saturn.
Saturn. So we want to look at Saturn, and Saturn's up here, and it's in Taurus. Here they are. They're in mutual reception. Now, they are, first of all, and this is a little more advanced, but the Saturn is highly it's accidentally dignified in the 7th house. Because it's exalted in Libra, and Libra is the 7th house sign, and so this Saturn is very dignified. So there is a seriousness about a lot of his. Some of them are playful, but let's see. They are making a nice Earth trine to each other. It's a little, well, it's like 5 degrees, I think 57 minutes or something like that. Yeah. It's an Earth trine between them. So they do have an aspect with one another, but they're even stronger with each other as a in mutual reception. But what does this mean for him? Okay, so this is what we want to look at. First of all, this Venus has a Capricornian, Saturnian kind of flavor because of the Saturn ruling this Capricorn, and the Saturn has a Taurian kind of feel. Okay, so it's accidentally dignified. It's exalted in the sign of Libra. So in this particular case, Venus is in a separating Earth trine with it, and their connection is even stronger. Many of his songs had to do with either relationships, 7th house, or either father figure themes. He has some of his famous songs, Sweet Caroline. Now, I think this is very interesting. One of his, and actually he's been on a commercial lately, I Am, I Said. And I think this has to do with his Libra Aries on the ascendant descendant. You're a Libra, Andy. So what do you think? I mean, I think for Libra, sometimes, particularly it's Libra rising, there's always this need to serve other people. Like they put themselves last instead. They're always serving the people on the seventh house.
Mm.
And so I think that there's something to be said about that. When you put I am, I said, it's like, here I am, I'm here, or solitary man. And my favorite song that he's ever done, it's not one that's much more commercial, but it's Play Me. I don't know if you know that song, but it is a beautiful love song. And a lot of his stuff was very loving, very caring and everything. But he was very serious about his music and everything. And so these two together are like a power mutual reception with each other. You guys have questions?
No, no questions. That makes sense to me. You
Yeah.
chose to look at Venus because Venus was his chart ruler because he was a Libra rising.
Yeah, and Venus is about music. It's a musical, it's artistic, but and it's interesting that it's in Capricorn. But you know what? They work together. He did his work on that. So that's his artwork. That's his art. That's what his artistry is all about.
Well, and I'm just noticing, so I'm looking at the moon in Capricorn and looking at its dispositor, which is also Saturn. And it's just interesting that anything in Capricorn that has the same dispositor of Saturn in Taurus, but that's not a mutual reception with Saturn because um,
Right.
Saturn's
But
not in a moon's based sign, but it's still in a nice trine, and like I just can't help but look at that other planet in Capricorn to be curious.
And thank I was going to talk about that, and I thank you for bringing that up. So here's the thing: there's mutual reception, and then there's reception. So that moon is receiving that energy from Saturn,
Mm.
and that is his love of the music that that he produced and everything. Absolutely, that has a lot to do with that. Um, Trying to think if there was something else. Also, there's another Saturnian little thing about this is there Saturn disposits its energy to another planet, actually two other planets. Do you know what it is? This
Uh,
is what yeah, this is what we were talking about. This is a traditional rulership.
oh, the Sun and Mercury.
The Sun and Mercury in Aquarius, which is the traditional rulership for that, is Saturn. Saturn is a very, very, and plus he has Jupiter conjunct that Saturn as well. And so that really expands on that, that this maybe he was writing it, his music at 3 in the morning, or something, was something that where he worked very hard at doing this stuff. So he has the moon, the Venus, the Sun, and the Mercury. All are the dispositor is for them is Saturn.
Wow.
And yeah, and yeah, Mercury in Aquarius, that's the highest air sign you could have. It's and so there's a lot of intelligence put into it. There's a lot of thought put into it. He had his own style. He worked on it really hard. And so yeah, this Saturn is a very important um, planet in his chart. The other thing that's really interesting, and this is a little more advanced too, is that Saturn is exalted in the sign of Libra, and Libra is on his ascendant. So again, we have another Saturnian kind of marker on his chart that really kind of shows who he is, what kind of person he is.
Mm.
Okay, so that was mutual reception. And we're going to move on to, okay, so here's the chain. Here's a dispositor chain, and this is a really interesting chart. And I do not get into politics when I bring political people onto there. I look at these people as just people from an astrological point of view. So I just want to put that in there so we know. Here we have another Saturnian kind of thing here. So the ascendant is in Aquarius, the rising sign, and we have the chart rulers are again Saturn and Uranus. There you go, Jay-Z. There's the two planets. So Uranus came up later in after everything was already kind of distributed out. You know, Saturn was the last planet, then Uranus comes into play. And what I find interesting about just the fact that Saturn and Uranus, which are so different in their dynamics, rules Aquarius, I think it's very appropriate for them to for Aquarius to be ruled by both Saturn and Uranus.
Well,
Be-
I actually want to ask you about that because they're such different energies. Saturn would be all structured and kind of tense in that rulership area, and Uranus is all electrical, and they just seem like such different energies. So how can we rectify the double rulership there?
okay, well, the way I see it and the way I've learned about it is the fact that Aquarius is about, groups of like-minded people. You know, there's the Saturn that holds people together. It's that commitment to whatever their movement is, whatever they're working on that is like-minded, and it could be as unique as as anything. And but it's like, oh, I get what that's all about. It's got to be like something that's unique or that they're working on, but there's a bunch of people who are working on the same unique it's like the hippies back in the 70s.
Mhm.
Oh, we're not like the government or anything. No, they had their own little government. They had their own way of doing things that was and Saturn was the glue that held them together. It's the same kind of concept where Saturn is exalted in Libra, because that's a one-on-one relationship where you need a commitment, and Saturn is the glue that holds that together. It's the same thing on a bigger on a collective level. You have a bunch of people who are working together, a band of people, a party. Unless you're the truest Aquarius from the Iranian side of it, and you're going to go and crash the party. These are people who all know each other, and they're brought together in a Saturnian way because they have some agenda or whatever that they're doing for their party, right? Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
so like Saturn would be holding the structure of the group, and Uranus would be breaking out of that structure, and they're both dealing with the group.
Oh, yeah, that's
Okay.
right. That's great idea. So here you have Saturn and Uranus. So I use both. I use both traditional and modern. So it gets a little complex sometimes, but I use both Saturn and Uranus. So I want to look at Saturn first, and Saturn's here over here in the 12th house. And it's in Capricorn. It's in its own sign. So we're done with Saturn. That's fine. It's kind of all by itself here. It's making an out of sign conjunction to Jupiter. And Saturn's very happy in the 12th house. It's in its joy. It loves being there. It loves being in the 12th house because it is the house of undoing. And so, Saturn's like, that's, you know, so
Debbie,
yeah.
my
It really
Saturn's
is.
in the 12th house, FYI.
And how does that work for you?
Oh, it works great. It's in Pisces.
Oh, now see, that's beautiful.
Thank you.
So is
So
Saturn
any,
at home in the 12th because it can undo some stuff and it's happy undoing stuff, basically?
yeah, well, this is based on, I mean, this goes to Vettius Valens. We'll give him let's give a toast to Vettius
Okay.
for, for saying that, because his whole thing was, the 12th house was like, a horror show. It's like, a dungeon. And, Saturn's like, yeah, there you go. And Saturn is basically, like according to him, Saturn is like, it's horrible. It's like, it's whip me on the back, another, let me have another one. Yeah, just keep going. But
Did you just bring up self-flagellation in the Dispositer episode?
yeah, whatever. But so and then he's got Jupiter. Jupiter is conjunct that Saturn, so it expands that. We're going to get back to that because it's actually a good placement for that Saturn, but in a different way than Vettius Valens would describe it. Anyway, okay, let's get to the Uranus part of this. So we have Uranus over here in the 7th house, and it's in Leo. Okay, so now we got another dispositor. Uranus, okay, in the 7th house. it's going to shake up. It's going to shake up. He's going to shake up people on a one-on-one basis. This is the way he is, and there's some sort of leadership going on there with that. But this is a generational planet, so we're going to just hold that on for 1 second. And he grew up in that environment, in that generational environment of where Uranus was in Leo. But we'll talk about the sun now, because the sun rules the Leo. And here we have the sun. It's in Leo. So that's it. This is a very short chain. I made it easier for you guys so you could see it. But there's so much more to this chart. Just the fact that the chain is here. The chain is with, the chart ruler, okay? And you have the Saturn, you have Uranus in Leo, and then your sun is in Leo. This is someone who is a leader. This is someone who's going to be strong and be able to be very on top of what he's doing. He knows what he's doing. He's in charge. He's in charge. This is in charge right here. um so Let's see here. Saturn being the only planet in its own way, they are significant in their connections with the planets that are led them to the via dispositorship. Okay, so there is a connection with these. Actually, this is interesting. The two chart rulers are in and in conjunct. They're in a quincunx with each other. That's a 150-degree aspect, by the way, JC, which means that they're not connected to each other. How does this work then for Barack Obama? We have to figure this out, because the bottom line is these two aren't connected in some way. And ironically, they both rule his chart. In some way, it's okay, because he basically knows how to expand on his business-like approach on a very humble way in the 12th house. The 11th, this Uranus here, not connecting with this, is not going to wreck his plans. It is going to be creative. It's going to be able to address one-on-one people in different ways. He can accept people who are different, who are unique, and be able to handle that very well. And his sun gives him it shines a light on, I get you, I understand you, I really understand where you're coming from. Now, here's the other interesting thing. How does he speak? He speaks with confidence. His Mercury is in the sun sign as well. It's in Leo. He speaks with confidence. He knows what he's talking about. And he serves people through what he speaks. When we look at now, here's more dispositor chains. It's a different dispositor chain. I started here, but here we go. Here's a chain for you. Mars and Pluto. Okay, they're both in Virgo. What is Virgo all about? Service to others, right?
Yeah, it was
Service to
noticing that you
others.
can start a chain anywhere, like that Virgo chain. I don't mean
Yes,
to say what you were gonna say, but like it's just interesting how that you can start in Virgo and then that transfers over to the Mercury in Leo, which then transfers to the Sun in Leo, and then it arrives at that Sun in Leo, and so that's the end of that chain. Now I'm seeing, but if you start with the Moon in Gemini, that bounces to the Mercury in Leo, which bounces to the Sun in Leo. So like now I'm seeing it. There's multiple chains in one chart. That's so interesting. You can chain from any planet essentially.
exactly, exactly. And this kind of defines the person. If you see these chains, how they work together. He has a very integrated chart with all these chains, and that works so well for Barack Obama. Look at his moon. I mean, moon usually in an air sign is kind of, it can be difficult. For him, it's not. He's, because of the chain of everything that comes back to his son. It comes back to his son, but he's got all this stuff going on. So this is a chain. And if it wasn't for the Saturn being in its rulership, this might have been a final dispositor. But also we have the Neptune up here in Scorpio. So the two rulers for that here again, Jay-Z, is the two rulerships for Scorpio is Pluto and Mars. So Mars was the original, and then Pluto came along, and Pluto really kind of blew the lid off of it. It really kind of resonated with Scorpio pretty well. And So it comes back to these two again, that Neptune.
So wait, the sun's not the final dispositor because if you start at the ascendant, it stops at Saturn and Capricorn. So there's two final ends of the chain. So that's why it's not one final dispositor.
Exactly,
It's like the
exactly.
final dispositors, but in this chart,
Right.
right?
Exactly. So here you have two planets that are going to receive, and these are power planets. You've got Saturn and conjunct Jupiter, and Jupiter is in Saturn's sign. This is very, very good for him. And then you have the sun. And so they're either going to disposit finally to the Saturn or to the sun.
Wait, so
And
normally you would say having two planets in their own signs is a positive thing. Um, I had a chart once of a lady who had five planets in their own signs. Like, so is it better to have a final dispositor, or does that just because you might say it's better to have multiple planets in their own signs. Is it just a different life path, or is it better? Or maybe better is not the right word. What do you think?
well, I could speak personally for my own chart. I have two planets in rulership, my sun and my Mercury. And sometimes it is difficult because it is like, am I the creative person, sun in Leo, or am I the Mercury in Virgo? It's kind of,
Well,
and
why
I have to
why can't you be
combine that.
both? Okay.
I can be both, and that's what I do.
And
That's
well, and
what I
it would
do.
be cyclical depending on the transit. Like when the moon's in Virgo, you're going to be that Virgo Mercury part, and when the moon's in Leo, you're going to be very Leo. Like,
Yeah. Yes, yeah, and a lot of it has to do with the transits and your progressions and everything else. But even on from a natal point of view, uh, you know, there's so many things that influence your chart, isn't it? It's just so amazing. But yeah, I mean, but for him, it's the Sun and Saturn,
yeah, I guess you're
and
right. It's just another layer. It doesn't. There's not one that's better or worse. It's
right,
just some charts have a final dispositor, and others have multiple final dispositors, and that's just different.
yeah.
It's like the machine is built differently, basically.
Exactly. And here's the interesting thing too about this. I love this when I always do these dispositor chains, and sometimes they go on forever. And then when I have a long chain, what I love to look at is that like there's two planets not in this chain. What's going on with those two planets? Because they're standouts now. And so they might have, if you have everything's blended so much, it's kind of like when you mix, when you're making a, dessert, and, you start with all your ingredients and it's totally a different, eh, you know, end part, when you're at the end of it. But when you have those two standouts, they stand out. They actually kind of like, boing, you really feel that those two planets because they're by themselves. They're not within that grouping. And so those are interesting as well to see those.
This is so
Yeah.
cool. It's rare that someone teaches me something new. Like, and no offense to anybody. It's just I've been studying astrology for 25 years. So it's cool that I'm like, I never knew what a dispositor chain was. I'm all tripping. Jay-Z, are you tripping on your chart right now?
I am because now I'm trying to think back to what you were saying, Andy, right? So say something's in its own sign, like say your moon is in Cancer. Well, say your Jupiter is right next to your moon, so it's also in Cancer. So is that like the Jupiter goes to the moon who's already right there next to it?
Yeah, and it is actually exalted in Cancer. So that's a beautiful combination.
All right.
Jupiter Moon. Oh my goodness.
I see. And
Yeah.
so this is what Andy said, because here's the other thing is in my chart, I happen to have four planets in Pisces, who then that is ruled by Jupiter. So
Yeah.
those all chain to the Jupiter, which is
Yeah.
next to my moon in Cancer.
Yeah. And if you want to add Neptune into there, because that's the modern ruler, you could do both.
Mm-hmm.
It gets
Wow,
interesting,
interesting.
and yeah, it gets real interesting. It's fun. I love
Wow, that's
doing
cool.
this. It was fun.
Can I say something real quick, Debbie? I don't want to take up
Yeah.
too much of your time, but I just want the viewers and the students to know something. that when I look at dispositors, I think of them physically, and this actually can help people imagine of why they're important. Because I think sometimes it's on the paper and we're doing that, and that's cool. But why is that important? How, let me say something like about the physicals. Like, so if we look at, like, Barack Obama, we could say the okay, the Saturn in or Aquarius rising means that he lives in the veins of the legs and the venous, like, air system of the whole body. Well,
Right.
then it's a structure part of the body, and that's a Saturnian place. So then where is that structure focusing? Oh, it's in Saturn and Capricorn. So that Saturn's structured on the hips of his bones of his hip and his knee, where Saturn's at home there, which is very happy because we get structure and tension where there should be structure and tension, which is the bones of the knee. So he has this kind of structured body with a structure in the good place. Now, if we go to the Leo parts of the dispositor, like, we'd say the Uranus in Leo makes a kind of electricalism in the physical heart. And then where's that living though? Oh, it's back into the heart. So he's got a good beating heart. So I actually always imagine dispositors physically. If we took the Jay-Z example, we'd say Pisces lives in the whole aura, and there's this Jupiterian
Mm.
quality to it of, like, expansiveness. Well, where's that Jupiter expanding? Oh, it's in Cancer, which is the waters of the chest. So now we get this, like, kind of expansive Pisces person who's, like, very tending to their home and people they love. And, so whereas if the person had Jupiter in Gemini, that would be a Pisces who's expanding through the talk. It's like, I always think of it physically. And I'm not trying to detract from the lecture, but I just want to add that layer so that people.
No, you're adding it. You're not distracting.
Okay.
I just love astrology. It's just so amazing how vast it is. How you could look. And that's what I love, the fact that everybody has a different point of view, and they bring it in, and it all works together, and we all learn from each other. We all learn from each other. It's
Yeah.
amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
great, Debbie.
Thank you. I'm loving it. I hope you are too, Jay-Z, because I'm enjoying this. So.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
so
Yeah,
this is the
definitely.
dispositor. Thank you. So this is the dispositor chain. So this was a short chain, but I know you guys are going to be looking at charts now and seeing, so the next
We're
one
gonna be chaining
is,
so hard.
okay, now this is going to get trippy. We're going to go into the loop. Okay. So this is a
Not the
dispos.
loop. No.
The loop.
Look at all this
Fasten
mess
your
here.
seatbelts.
That's right.
We're headed into the loop.
Yeah, yeah. So we have Maya Angelou. You guys know who that is, right? She's the
Mhm.
poet. Really interesting stuff here. Let me give you a little background of her before we get into what this is all about. So you'll really get into her. That Leo rising, it gives her a lot of oomph. She really is amazing. She has a lot of self empowerment. So I just want to go back to what. So when she was 8 years old, her mother's boyfriend sexually abused and raped her. This guy's name was Freeman, and he was found guilty, but was um, but was jailed for only 1 day. 4 days after his release, he was murdered, probably by Angelou's uncles, and she became mute for 5 years as a result of blaming herself for the death. So I just wanted to give that background first before we dig into this, because I think it's important to understand where she's coming from, to understand your 5 years being mute. That is incredible. So that means she didn't get out of that until she was in her teens, at least 13 years old, right? So here we go. The sun is the chart ruler, because we have Leo rising. And so we're going to look at the sun. Now, this is an excellent, excellent placement for the sun. It's exalted in Aries, and it's conjunct the Jupiter in Aries. And the Jupiter is accidentally dignified in the ninth house, and the sun is in its joy in the ninth house. It finds its joy in the ninth house. Loves everything about Aries and the fire signs and the fire houses. And this is the highest fire house, so it finds its joy there. Well, it's not in its own sign. So we have a dispositor, and the dispositor is Mars. Okay. Now, Mars is in Aquarius here. And think about what she went through, that Mars in the 7th house in Aquarius. It shook up her world, what happened to her. We have two dispositors for the Mars, and that would be Saturn and Uranus again. So we go to Saturn here, and it's in Sagittarius. And so the ruler for that would be Jupiter, and that goes back here. That loops back to the Mars. We go to the Uranus. It's in mutual reception with Mars. So there's like, so that's a short loop. And here, and you guys mentioned that. That is amazing that you saw that. And this is the loop that she has. These planets are connected to each other based on her own personality. When she was born, this is what she was born into. She has Jupiter and Sun. These are her angels, I think, up here in the 9th house. And she's got Uranus in the 8th house with Venus. And I'm going to talk about this Venus and Mercury too here. They're important as well. But that Mars in the 7th house. So this was a loop that she had to overcome. And it probably was after that 5 years that she went mute, then this came along. And we could probably, we're not going to get into the depth of the progressions or transits at that time, but I'm sure that something triggered these two guys over here in the 8th house, that whatever depth of hell that she went through, okay, was mitigated by the Venus and the Mercury in Pisces in the 8th house. She is a poet. And the love that she had for words, and that she was restricted from that, that had a lot to do with that. And not for anything, we can't exclude this, that Saturn is squaring this Mars and Mercury. Okay. And this is deep. She's got these two planets in Pisces in the 8th house. Deep. This is deep. And the Venus is exalted, and a lot of poets have like some sort of Piscean energy in their charts. And then, of course, the Mercury in Pisces. They say that's debilitated in in Pisces. It's the opposite sign of its rulership in Virgo. But I so admire people who have Mercury in Pisces. They see the big, I'm so detail oriented. It's annoying even to myself. For her, people who have Mercury in Pisces, they see the big picture.
Jay-Z has Mercury in Pisces.
Yeah. You see the big picture,
But
right?
it's opposite Pluto and Virgo, so
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
at both.
So this combination here saves her, I think, through. And it's so weird how it's sandwiched between. I look at this stuff, it's even depends on where the location is, not just the location in what house, but where is it as in relation to all this other stuff that was going on in her life, and this is it right here. This helped her move forward in her life.
I was just chaining. I was just looking at how that Pisces leads back to the Jupiter, which leads back to the chain. And I was looking at the moon and how that goes to Venus, which
Yeah.
goes to Jupiter, which goes to the chain. Like,
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, that's it. Because Jupiter does, rule. That's the dispositor for these two as well. That Jupiter is an angel for her. It's the most elevated planet in her chart too. It's just a beautiful Jupiter. It just works so well for her. It's squaring the Pluto too. It's like, and Jupiter said, no, not today. You're not getting me. That's it. I'm working this out. That Pluto is in the 12th house in Cancer. It happened in her home, in her own
can I
home where
ask you
she
a
lived.
question?
Yeah.
Okay, this is a challenge advanced question. So if I stump you, don't get mad at me. Okay. So from a teleological perspective of like development theory, how do you think we should look at dispositorship in terms of development theory of the human form?
You know what? I think that if you were going to use any chart to really I would use this chart. I think that that resonates with what you're saying. How does it help them grow? Um, how does it to become into themselves, as you always put it, teleology, that Jupiter helped her grow. That's a really interesting question, Andy, because you basically, uh, it's a great research thing to do, I think,
So
because,
is it
yeah,
maybe like the dispositor chain shows the pattern in which the person grows, kind of, like there's a pattern to the chain, right? So it's maybe in that human form, the soul senses machine, it shows how the machine is built and that affects how it grows or something like that.
you know what? Maybe I'm not saying it this. That's exactly I think what this is about. I do. I'm totally with you. I think it helps you to understand a deeper level of the person based on the connection between these planets, whether they're aspecting or not. Aspects is one thing. There's something more on a soul level with this thing that I think really connects.
It
Um,
connects not only body systems but also houses. Like you were saying that Mars in 7 connected 9 and 7, so it's connecting houses, which
yes.
that's so fascinating.
Yeah, it is. It is fascinating. I love this stuff. It's amazing. When I started doing it with Jerry London when she showed it to me, it was basically just a lot of fun following them. But then as I was using it in chart interpretations, it's like wow, this really puts it all together what this person's all about. You
Wow.
know.
Cool. All right, we
That's
got 2
interesting.
minutes. Give us the finals.
Oh my goodness. Oh, this is the final one. This is the. Oh wait. Ian Anderson. I don't know if you know who Ian Anderson is. He is the front runner and flautist for this really a 70s group called Jethro Tull. I
Yeah.
don't know. I love Jethro Tull. I have several of his. I just want to, before I start with, I just want to, I'll read this quick one. So just to give you, let me bring you all things refined, galliards and lute songs served in chilling ale. Greetings, well met fellow, hail. I am the wind to fill your sail. I am the cross to take your nail. A singer of these angel's times with kitchen prose and gutter rhymes. It's so him. He's evil and wonderful, and he's a master at the flute. 70s, everybody was doing drums and guitars, and he was playing a flute like a madman. Uh, so here is Ian Anderson's chart. Virgo rising, very odd for someone who is not that shy. But of course, if you see in the 12th house, there is, I think this sun really kind of shines the light on this 12th house. Now, the final dispositor. This one's pretty easy. Everything goes to the sun. This is where we
Ah,
talk about
nice.
everything gets funneled into the sun. And we'll start somewhere. Let's start with Jupiter. Jupiter is in Scorpio. So we have Mars and Pluto. If we look at Mars, it's in Gemini, and Gemini is ruled by Mercury. Mercury is interesting. It's at the anaretic degree, 29 degrees of Cancer. That means during his whole gestation period, he knows what to sing, what to do, how to talk, and everything. He's got Mercury down, but it's in Cancer. Okay, that goes to the moon. The moon is in Taurus, exalted at the very top of the chart, very passionate about his music anyway, and it goes back to Venus, and that goes to the sun. Everything in this chart gets funneled back to the sun, and it doesn't. This is the thing where I was telling about where it's almost like the second chart ruler, because that sun it kind of commands to all of these
Mm,
planets, where Mercury is at the 29 degree of Cancer.
yeah.
It is the chart ruler, but it is that sun that really defines his personality, which is very interesting.
Nice. Well, so in the final dispositor, all things lead back to the FD. Final dispositor.
Yep,
Okay.
the final. Yeah. Yeah.
Good timing, Debbie. We really do have to close up now, but I do want everyone to know where to find you. And I saw you have
Yeah.
that slide.
Yeah.
Thanks for
So that's,
teaching us this, by the way.
Yeah, this is awesome. This is so
oh,
good. And
thank,
yeah, I know when I was looking over to the side, it's because I was writing down my own chart and the rulers ships and stuff and tracing my own chain. And it's really fun. This is
oh,
awesome.
good.
Thank
I
you
had
so
fun
much.
too. This was amazing. Thank you so much, Andy. Thank you, JC, for being here. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you again soon. I'll
All
see
right,
you
so
guys
Debbie
soon.
D, everyone can find you, and tell us, you teach intro astrology classes at your own school, or where is it?
I actually on the Astrological Society of Princeton, aspnj.org, aspnj.org. I will be teaching beginner classes in October there. And I've been doing that for over 14 years. I love doing beginners charts. Jay-Z, I hope that you'll join us. And if you could contact me if you need more information about that too. So
Oh, yeah, fun.
yeah.
Nice. Excellent.
Thank
I
you so
will.
much. Thank you guys. I really
Thank
enjoyed this.
So people can email you at Aquamoon Astrology because you're an Aquarius moon.
Uh,
That's what that's from.
yeah.
Aquarius Moon Astrology, Aquamoon, or Debbie D on Facebook. You guys, you can find Debbie on Facebook. She's really fun on Facebook. She'll actually respond to you and talk to you, and also on Instagram. So go find Debbie on Facebook actually and talk to her.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd love that. Okay. Thank you
All right.
guys. Mwah.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right. Bye bye.